Hello, my beautiful co-creators. Lilu here. Today on my Soul Sessions, I have Noah BenShea. He's the author, best-selling author of over 22 books translated into 18 languages. He's recently been featured on PBS. He has a special on the journey to greatness. So he's one of America's most loved and recognized poet and philosopher. It's such a delight to have him. His name has been associated with the top brands in the country, including Starbucks. He had his quote and name on over 30 million Starbucks cup. That's a lot. And no wonder, because this man has so much wisdom, and I'll be interviewing him today on the journey to greatness, and we'll be discussing honesty, love, and faith. Here we go. Noah, how are you doing?
Hi, Lilu. I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you doing there in Paris?
I know, Paris to Santa Barbara, my hometown, my birth town.
Well, it's a beautiful day here on the Pacific. The sea is quiet. The light is bright.
Oh,
It's a wonderful fall is in the air.
yeah, you live in a little heaven on earth.
Amen.
So tell me, in your PBS show on the journey to greatness, you speak a lot
Mhm.
about three main keys to open up the heaven on earth, if we will. And the first
Yes.
thing you say is we have to be honest with ourselves. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I think that all social deceit, every social lie that's out there begins with a personal deceit. If you are dishonest with yourself, you will inevitably be dishonest with others. If you want others to be honest with you, then it requires you to be honest with them. But our ability to be honest with others is premised upon our ability to be honest with ourselves. On all three of the issues we're going to speak about, honesty, love, and faith, I always feel that the person at the center of this is ground zero. You know, ground zero is where the rocket ship takes off from. So no matter how high you want to go in life, it begins with you. So the ability to be honest with others is premised on our ability to be honest with ourselves. Our ability to be loving to others is premised on our ability to be loving to ourselves. And our ability to have faith in others is premised on our ability to have faith in ourselves.
So how do we do that? Because sometimes the reality is not so nice. Some people are victims in life, blame others about their reality. So what is the first step in becoming honest?
I think that in the first step in almost anything you want in life, it's intent.
Mm.
Do you intend to be honest with yourself? We all fall short. That's not the question. We're terribly human. We live in a little blue ball spinning in space at 1,070 miles an hour. That we can lose our balance is something any of us can do at any moment in time. But Scripture reminds us that we're not expected to finish the work, but neither are we excused from it. So if we try to be honest with ourselves, we're trying to be honest with ourselves. Do we fail sometimes? Yes. Yes. Do we lie to ourselves about failing sometimes? Yes, we do that too. But I think until you have the intent to be honest to yourself, or to be loving to yourself, or to have faith in yourself, nothing happens.
So what is the motive behind that intent, though? What is the premise of life? How great can
Well,
it be?
I'll tell you what the simple the premise on it is to make your life better sooner, to move you toward having the life you almost promised yourself you would have or wanted to have, but never have, because for the most part we're large on procrastination. Someday, what we will do someday is no day.
Uh-huh.
You know, so it begins with saying, I want to make my life better. There's nothing, this is not terribly intellectual. It's not, at the end of the day, it's not the philosopher's job to make simple things difficult, but difficult things simple. So if my contention is you want to have a better life, that's a pretty basic drive that wisdom or intellectualism is more than enlightened despair. It's not having a terrible life, but having insight about it. It's making your life better.
Uh-huh.
I want to do that.
And so, but there's a starting point though where you have to believe though. It seems like okay, you have to be honest and you have to tell yourself, okay, this is where I'm at. But you have to also have faith in I mean all those three components, honesty, love, faith that we're going to discuss seem to be interlinked, right?
Yes, there,
Because
you know what it's like, Lulu? It's like imagine a camera with three different lenses, okay?
Mhm.
That you until you can be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with others. Until you can be honest with others, you can't be in a love relationship. If you can't be honest with someone, you can't have love. And until you can have love, you can't have faith. Because faith isn't premised on some intellectual business. It has its actual grounding in love. That's why, when they say Jesus is love, it is so linked to the notion of faith. The ability to have faith in Jesus is premised about one's ability to love Jesus. And the ability to love Jesus, if you will, is premised on your ability to be honest with Jesus. So those three are the interlocking lenses where you put one in and do it. It doesn't work the other way. It just doesn't. You can't have faith in your partner unless you love your partner, and you can't love your partner unless you can be honest with your partner.
so once we become honest though with ourselves, it can be really hard and draining. And how do we shift that from loving ourselves, from honesty to
Well,
love?
it can be. I think you're right on. I think it can be very hard to be honest with ourselves, but nothing weighs heavier on our lives than living a lie. So I think it is a burden to be honest with ourselves, but I think that it's less burdensome than living a lie,
Hmm.
because living a lie always eventually turns around and corrupts the soul.
So how did you
And we're
step?
only here for such a short time.
Yeah, but how do you step towards love? Something that is uncertain, something that can be very scary, something that can be just
Yes.
the most scariest thing for the ego, actually, that is terrifying you, and you don't want to lose your identity. You're scared of losing everything that you know of. How do you jump? How do you do that? How do you do that quantum leap of faith?
Well, I think that remarkably enough, small steps are the first steps toward leaps of faith. So I think you edge out. In a relationship, you begin to trust someone. You don't. It isn't like you meet someone and then you celebrate your 10th anniversary. You meet someone and you get to know them. And now we live in a world where people want everything so immediately. There's no notion of graduated steps. But life is just a series of graduations. If you looked, it used to be if you went up you looked at your life and you thought it was a motion picture,
Mhm.
and then you went up into the projection room where they were showing the motion picture, what you thought was like one unfolding story was actually a piece of film with 50,000 little pictures, each happening one after the other. Now, the pictures happen at a speed which is linked to our blindness. So when we see it, it looks like it's just all one picture, but it's really a group of different pictures. Our life is like that too. We think it's all one unfolding moment, but it's one moment and then another moment and another moment. I say to people sometimes, think of a string of pearls. What makes a string of pearls so beautiful is that beside each pearl there is a knot on both sides. So when they are strung together, each pearl, like each moment in your life, has a knot on the other side of it. So honor each moment in your life. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, it can be attacking to your ego. But that's sometimes the best thing that ever serves you something, because our ego doesn't necessarily serve us. Our ego wants us to serve our ego. That's the issue. It's a difference between feeling badly and feeling bad about who you are. Sometimes your ego can take offense, but there's nothing wrong with you. Somebody can say something and hurt your opinion, but if they don't find you attractive, that just means how they find you. It has nothing to do with it. The question is, do you consider yourself attractive? Right? Do you think there are parts of you that are beautiful? It isn't attached to what somebody else thinks. So I think yes, it can be attacking to the ego. It can be a threat to the ego. And sometimes that serves us to realize that. But here's the other side of it. All real heroism happens on a private stage. Every hugely heroic moment in your life, it doesn't happen with an orchestra playing, with cameras shooting big pictures of you. It happens when it's the woman who at 11 o'clock in the morning, the housewife, decides not to take a drink from the bottle. It's the guy who's on a business trip who at 10 o'clock at night does not accept the invitation from some woman to break his vows to his wife. It happens when the kid is on the playground and every other kid calls him a name if he doesn't do something, and he just says, I'm not going to do it. Those are the small private acts of heroism no one else. In our life, each of us knows sometime when we've done something privately heroic, just as each of us knows sometime when we have done something privately that's a failure. You know? And the only person with a clear conscience is somebody with a bad memory.
So it really starts with us and within.
Absolutely. I think that if you ever think something really important in your life begins outside of you, then it's a way of making yourself not responsible. You know, let me give you a better take on this, or another take on it. That's my work. Part of me is the philosopher, part of me is the poet trying to find an image. Probably the one honest truth when you look at Judaism, Christianity, or Islam is what we call the golden rule. Treat other people as you want to be treated. Okay? This is really a golden rule, except if you're prepared to treat other people with the same disrespect that you have for yourself. So it begins with you. And people say, well, and that's the deal. I said, you want to make your life better, work on it. You know, it's not, I'll give you another take on this. The most major illness in the world is depression. The most major illness in the world is depression. The major cause for depression is stress. The major stress is people trying to be in control of things that are out of their control. You are not in control of what the world delivers to your doorstep. You are in control of your response. Respond, don't react.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
It's a very different setup. If you wake up in the morning and you walk outside and pick up the newspaper to see how the world tells you you should feel, you're an idiot. You have to wake up in the morning and say, I'm okay, I haven't hurt anybody, I'm thinking positive. However you can do. What the world does is how you choose to react to the world is your business. Mm-hmm. You know, people don't do things to us, they do things for them. People do things, it's because that's their business. Don't confuse their business with your business. Your business is feeling okay about who you are.
Mm-hmm. So how can you recreate that reality? Because apparently we can create any reality that we want. So
it starts by trying to hold this as a pretty clear focus that's what you want to achieve. Uh-huh. This is not. And here's the story. Mark Twain, the great American writer, wrote that good judgment comes from experience. And experience comes from bad judgment, right? Yeah. So it is true that experience is a great teacher, but the cost, the tuition for experience is your life. So you're trying to say, okay, what it took me 30 years to learn, I'm going to try and pass along. That's why I wrote the book, The Journey to Greatness. That's why I did the PBS special. That's why I'm doing this interview with you. My mission statement is to be of service to others. It's just, I don't think I'm a great guy because of this. I just think that's my work. I'm trying to do it. So I'm going to try and pass along the information that can make a difference in people's lives. And if it took me this long in my life to figure it out, I'm hoping it'll take you a little bit less time. And then maybe it'll take your children a little bit less time, and maybe it'll take your grandchildren less time yet. That's what you're doing. It's just passing the information along. You know, most of us don't lack for information. What most of us lack is the character to act on the information at hand. Mm-hmm. So the two issues here is I'm going to say to people, you have to be honest to yourselves. I'm sure I'm not the first person that's ever said you've got to be honest to yourself. The question is, are you prepared to be honest to yourself? That's the deal. When you go into court and they make you hold up your hand and say, your right hand, excuse me, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? We've got to do the same thing. We've got to be able to tell ourselves the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
And it's liberating, isn't it?
It is liberating. And you know what you said? because you mentioned it before, because when we first started talking, we said, well, this is hard because it sometimes threatens your ego. It threatens. Here's the story. The biggest swamp in the jungle. The biggest swamp in the jungle is pride. When we are afraid of what other people will think about us, we're worried about it. So we're dishonest, so we think other people will like us or like us more or think more about us. So humility is a very tricky business because I'll tell you a great story. There was a guy who was a member of a church, and the church decided that he was the most humble person in their community. So they decided they were going to give him a little medal. So he took the medal. The following Sunday, he went to church and he wore his medal, and they took it away from him. Humility. You know, it's a very hard business. I think that it isn't being falsely humble. But it's also not the inflation of self. That's a real issue. You know, when you were asking before about how hard it is and being afraid, there's a metaphor that I created that maybe will be an ally to somebody who watches our conversation. Let's say that your life is a wagon, and everything you want to carry in your life, everything that represents you is in this wagon. Now, to pull this wagon, you have 12 horses. But of the 12 horses, you have 11 horses of fear and only 1 horse of faith. Why? Because all of us have many more fears than we have faith. All of us. If you put any of the horses of fear at the front of the wagon, they'll say, oh, I couldn't do it last time. My father told me I couldn't do it. My second wife told me I couldn't do it. I failed the last time I did it, and the wagon is going nowhere. If you put the single horse of faith at the front of the wagon train, the horses of fear will follow. Your fears will be strength for your faith if you put your faith and not your fears in charge. That's the real challenge in life, to put our faith and not our fears in charge. Do we have fears? Yes. Do we have more fears than faith? Yes. Put your faith and not your fears in charge.
So tell us about the power of. Tell us more about the power of faith and faith.
Well, let me just share. I'll tell you a great image. But there's an old, I think it's a Persian quote that says, "An army of sheep led by a lion will defeat an army of lions led by a sheep." Right? You have to put the lion in you at charge, no matter how much we know the sheep inside. Let's talk about faith for a second. Many times when people talk about faith, they think we're talking about a relationship with God. However you know God, right? And I think God appreciates having our faith. But I don't think that faith is just a Sunday issue. I think faith is about our ability to have faith in our wife, have faith in our children, have faith in the people we work with, and our ability to have faith in any of these people is also premised on our ability to have faith in ourselves. So let's talk about this for a second. I think a great example is that at some point in life, we're all looking for forgiveness from God. So we think that forgiveness is a vertical line. You know, it goes up like this, between us and God. But God says, you know, I really appreciate you loving me and having faith in me. But frankly, I'm God and I don't need the same things that you need. Besides, the 10 Commandments, we say the 10 Commandments are pretty basic to a broad population. The first 5 commandments are between man and God. The second 5 commandments are between man and man. They're how we have to conduct ourselves with others. So God says, if you want me to forgive you as a vertical line, I think you have to be forgiving others as a horizontal line. So what you think is vertical is horizontal. And what I'm saying is that our ability to be forgiving of others is premised on our ability to be forgiving to ourselves. So the line doesn't begin like vertical. It begins by going in, and then we can go across, and then we can go up. So our ability to have faith in God is premised on our ability to have faith in others, is premised on our ability to have faith in ourselves.
Faith in our
Anytime,
dreams, faith in our the faith in ourselves.
faith, yes, not faith that we will accomplish it, but faith that we're going to try, that we're going to give it an honest, we're going to go for it. You
But is
know,
that
we're going
fair?
to.
Is that fair to say that once we work with the power of intention and faith and loving ourselves, then there is unlimited actually power and force that are supporting us in those attempts?
Absolutely. Would you, if you were to, absolutely there is. Now, if you were to ask me, is that an absolute guarantee? I'd say no. If you want a guarantee, buy a vacuum cleaner, right? But if you want to know whether it improves your chances, yes. How do I know? I'll tell you why. Because if you don't have faith in yourself, if you don't love yourself, if you're not honest to yourself, I can assure you your chances of success are much less, right?
And
This
of
is
being
about
fulfilled.
how do you increase the odds in your life?
Mm. So that's a journey, and it's a journey to greatness.
Yes, but greatness isn't, again, my take on this is that greatness isn't ahead of us. Greatness is within us. It's not who you are, but how you are, right? It's not what you have. If you look, one of the things that's a real issue right now, for example, in almost every country in the world, is economic pressure. A lot of people are really feeling the pinch.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people for a long time were too confused that how much they had in the wallet meant how much they were worth as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Things don't have to be good for us to be great. When you ask people who lived through the Great Depression, they say, yeah, it was a Great Depression, but we were there for each other and we gave things, we were there. When you ask men who had been in terrible wars together, they'll say, yes, it was terrible, but I counted on the guy next to me and we were there for each other. And when you saw people after 9/11 in New York, and you saw how people were there for each other when people were coming out and covered with ash and this. Now, I believe the Bush administration squandered that. I don't like what happened. But for the first couple of days, the feeling between people was so good. It's a great reminder that things don't have to be good for us to be great. And if you know, I mean, there was a time when my wife and I were dealing with some tough issues. And I said to her, I said, look, it's important for us to be loving to each other right now. Because if we can't be loving to each other right now when things are tough about something, then it won't matter when things are good. How you are at this moment is the moment that matters to the next moment. So I wrote something I did called 10 Tips for Tough Times, because I thought that played, and I took the time to try and put some of this together. May I read a couple to these to you, just to share with you?
Yeah, please.
Being broke is not the same as being broken. Losing money is not the same as being lost. And finding your balance is not something you can do on a balance sheet. I don't know if that translates to something, but don't confuse having less with being less. Don't confuse having more with being more, or what you have with who you are. Just a couple of ideas. I mean, I wrote 10 tips for tough times, and people can come to noahbenshea.com and see all of this. I'm not selling something; it's free.
So who are we?
I'm sorry.
So who are we if we're this neutral? We have to be neutral in everything. How do we
I
find
don't
this
think.
harmony?
I don't think we're neutral. Everything. I think we are each. You know, we've got our own. Our own little tastes and things we like to do, but I don't think we should confuse. I don't think we should. As you know, I just returned from a long stay in Rome. I like being in Italy. I like speaking Italian. It was a joy for me to learn Italian, but I shouldn't confuse my ability to speak Italian with who I am. You know,
But there is this
Voltaire.
detachment, there is this detachment, there is this non-identification, there is this that seems to be
With
actually the freedom and to liberate spirit and to be spirit on this planet. It's a hard thing to not to be either or, so it's quite a neutral position.
But what happens on the flip side of this is that all the media, the advertising world, is trying to sell you that the color of your hair, the necklace you're wearing, the car you are driving, the pants can get into or not get into
Defines
are who you are.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. It's not. Voltaire said when he got off the boat in Amsterdam, the first person he met was himself. You know, that's who are we? If I'm not a guy that has to dominate his wife at home, will need to dominate people in the office. A guy who is mean to people while he's rushing to get his passport will be mean wherever he goes. This is the real issue, is to stop and think about really what is at the core of who you are, and it's not what everybody's trying. I don't think it's a neutral issue. I think it's a vital issue, because I don't think that being honest and loving and having faith, and those are just three of the points in this book of mine, and the ability to laugh, the ability to have good health, the ability to come in grace to situations, humility. I don't think these are neutral issues. I think if you could go through this and you wake up in the morning, you're okay. Again, things don't have to be good for us to be great. On the journey to greatness, we've been sold in this society that people who are powerful are great. But we've all met people who are powerful and aren't that great. And we've all met people who have very little power, and some of them are really great people. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to understand. Many years ago, I was asked to give this talk at the Library of Congress in Washington. And the talk was about what constitutes civilization. So a lot of people think that civilization is like classical music. That's a civilized society. I said, well, I don't think so. The Nazis were playing classical music when they were marching people into the death camps. Some people say, well, porcelain teacups are really a mark of civilization. I said, I don't think so, because Japanese generals were drinking tea from porcelain teacups in the Rape of Shanghai. I said, I tend to think what constitutes civilization is what it says in the book of Genesis, how you treat the widow and orphan. And they said, what do you mean by that? I said, the widow and the orphan are people with no power. How people with power treat people without power is the mark of a civilization. That's my take on it. So I think how people, if you want to be great, it's how you treat yourself, how you treat others. That's greatness. Don't confuse it with being powerful or looking young or looking wise or old or however it is.
It's an everyday job. It's an every single second job.
Absolutely. It's a 24/7, 365, in your face. There's no mission accomplished. And that is the shared humanity of it and the shared heroism of day-to-day living. Right? You pick up your lunch pail, you go to work, you try to be a halfway decent person. People say, that sounds so simple. I say, well, if it sounds so simple, why is it so difficult for so many people to accomplish? Mm-hmm. Right? And they say, well, you're, an intellectual. I say, well, I don't want to confuse being able to say long words or understand difficult ideas as an excuse not to be nice to people. I know it works that way sometimes. Picasso was a bastard. Picasso said there are two kinds of women, goddesses and doormats. Now, who says that, right? But he was a great artist. But we can't confuse that he was a great artist with him being a great person. We all know people who can bring, but that's just, I don't like to think that if you call yourself an artist, it's an excuse to be less than nice to other people. That's just the way I was raised. I'm suspicious of people who think that being smart or being rich gives them the opportunity to think they're more important than other people. And I have a line that says, be cautious of people who confuse kindness with weakness.
I have a last little question regarding wealth because I'm interviewing John DeMartini actually on this tomorrow regarding it. There seems to be spirituality, and materialism, and we go from one side to the next, and it's quite hard for a lot of spiritual people or people wanting to make a difference in the world to find that right balance or tipping point where actually they're rewarded financially. And I know it's there's a I mean there is it fills your soul to be on this path, but how do you actually flip that to live this abundance that we all seem to be given the right to being born here?
Well, I think uh, many of us who were born here, meaning the Western world, or born so we always had a roof over our head or a car to drive, one, we have to know that we're blessed, that we've done nothing particular that allows us to do that. Many years ago, I was someplace and I thought, boy, I'm really special that this is happening, but I'm not such a much better person than somebody who's dying in Africa, and that's why I'm just lucky. So if you think that part of your life, the highest way of saying thank you is by conducting yourself with respect to other people. I think that's part of it. I don't think that there's anything, money is when you talk about neutral, money is a completely neutral medium. The question is, what do you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with it? And if it allows you to do good work, to good work, all the more power. In the Bible, King Solomon says, there is nothing wiser for a man than to sit under his vineyard with his face in the sun. This life is a gift. For us to enjoy it is wise. For us to refuse to enjoy this life is foolishness. So the question is, do you have the character to enjoy your life? Do you have the courage to suffer happiness? I'm not preaching wearing wool, uncomfortable clothing and whipping yourself. I don't think beating yourself up is the path to greatness. This life and this challenge is to enjoy this life that you've been given, treasure it, conduct yourself as a halfway decent person. Remember, of all the things you can make of life, you make a difference.
Thank you very much, Noah. Thank you very much, and I encourage everyone to go and check out your website that is posted here, and also to read your book. Your books, 22 books to choose from.
Thanks, Lou. In 18 languages, so I hope they connect with people. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so much
much.
for this time. It's a
Thank you.
blessing.
Thank you. So what is the first step in becoming honest?
I think that in the first step in almost anything you want in life, it's intent. Do you intend to be honest with yourself? We all fall short. That's not the question. We're terribly human. We live in a little blue ball spinning in space at 1,070 miles an hour. That we can lose our balance is something any of us can do at any moment in time. But Scripture reminds us that we're not expected to finish the work, but neither are we excused from it. So if we try to be honest with ourselves, we're trying to be honest with ourselves. Do we fail sometimes? Yes. Yes. Do we lie to ourselves about failing sometimes? Yes, we do that too. But I think until you have the intent to be honest to yourself, or to be loving to yourself, or to have faith in yourself, nothing happens.
So what is the motive behind that intent?
If you are dishonest with yourself, you will inevitably be dishonest with others. If you want others to be honest with you, then it requires you to be honest with them. But our ability to be honest with others is premised upon our ability to be honest with ourselves. On all three of the issues we're going to speak about, honesty, love, and faith, I always feel that the person at the center of this is ground zero. Ground zero is where the rocket ship takes off from. So no matter how high you want to go in life, it begins with you. So the ability to be honest with others is premised on our ability to be honest with ourselves. Our ability to be loving to others is premised on our ability to be loving to ourselves. And our ability to have faith in others is premised on our ability to have faith in ourselves.
So how do we do that? Because sometimes the reality is not so nice. Some people are victims in life, blame others about their reality. Faith. Here we go. Noah, how are you doing?
Hi, Lulu. I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you doing there in Paris?
I know, Paris to Santa Barbara, my hometown, my birth town.
Well, it's a beautiful day here on the Pacific. The sea is quiet. The light is bright.
Oh,
It's a wonderful fall is in the air.
yeah, you live in a little heaven on earth.
Amen.
So tell me, in your PBS show on the journey to greatness, you speak a lot
Mhm.
about three main keys to open up the heaven on earth, if we will. And the first
Yes.
thing you say is we have to be honest with ourselves. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I think that all social deceit, every social lie that's out there begins with a personal deceit.
Hello, my beautiful co-creators. Lilu here. Today on my Soul Sessions, I have BenShea. He's the author, best-selling author of over 22 books translated into 18 languages. He's recently been featured on PBS. He has a special on the journey to greatness. So he's one of America's most loved and recognized poet and philosopher. It's such a delight to have him. His name has been associated with the top brands in the country, including Starbucks. He had his quote name on over 30 million Starbucks cup. That's a lot. And no wonder, because this man has so much wisdom, and I'll be interviewing him today on the journey to greatness, and we'll be discussing honesty, love, and so what is the premise of life? How great can
Well,
you
I'll,
be?
I'll, I'll tell you what the simple the premise on it is to make your life better sooner, to move you toward having the life you almost promised yourself you would have or wanted to have, but never have, because for the most part we're large on procrastination. Someday, what we will do someday is no day. So it begins with saying, I want to make my life better. There's nothing, this is not terribly intellectual. It's not, at the end of the day, it's not the philosopher's job to make simple things difficult, but difficult things simple. So if my contention is you want to have a better life, that's a pretty basic drive that wisdom or intellectualism is more than enlightened despair.